Alicia turned back toward Nathan's casket as everyone in the room pivoted that direction with her. Shock held her in its motionless grip, blocking her attempt to run to her husband and protect him from this crazed woman. Her limbs wouldn't move. They were heavy and earthbound. She saw that her parents, Wesley and Helen King, had come in, and her father was trying to move Sheila back from the coffin as Helen made shushing sounds and attempted to distract her. Men from the funeral home were also trying to move Sheila away from Nathan's casket. Sheila's long black hair was tangled into knots, and her black eyes were further blackened by the mascara that ran down and had been smeared around her eyes, making her look like a raccoon. Only her bright red lipstick seemed to be intact as she fought those who would pull her away, grabbing onto the casket and jerking it sideways in her efforts to remain by Nathan's side. More people rushed in and held onto the casket to prevent it from being moved off its pedestal. Finally, Alicia was able to get her shocked body and mind to work well enough to make it to the side of the fray. She tried to get Sheila's attention, but Sheila turned her eyes away and kept on struggling with the men who had managed to detach her from Nathan's final bed. Loud sobs and curses could be heard as they pulled her toward the other room in an effort to calm her down. Numbly, Alicia watched what was happening. Her mind was too dull at the moment to wonder why Sheila was acting this way. She and Sheila had been best friends in high school, and Sheila had been her matron of honor at their wedding. Later, when Sheila had needed a job, Alicia had recommended her to Nathan, who was in need of an assistant in his chiropractic office. That was about 2 years ago. Since then, Alicia and Sheila had grown apart, and she had rarely seen her except on the few occasions when she met Nathan in his office. As the men pulled the struggling woman to the exit door, Sheila finally settled her eyes on Alicia. The transformation was obvious as her eyes flipped from frantic to raw hatred. "He didn't love you, you know," she shouted at Alicia. "He was going to ask you for a divorce so we could be together." Alicia stared at her as did everyone else in the room. Alicia noticed Nathan's mother as she threw her hands over her mouth in dismay. This drama wasn't happening to her, Alicia thought. It couldn't be, because Nathan had loved her. He didn't want a divorce. They were going to try for a baby. "He's mine, not yours," Sheila screamed as they forced her on out the door. "Mine." She was aware of her mother's arms cradling her now, and of her father, who was standing between her and the other people at the viewing like a guard dog prepared to snap at any intruder. Chad had come to be with their father in defense of the family unit as well. Alicia saw this, but everything was fuzzy, and she felt like she was going to pass out. All she wanted to do was melt down into the carpet and go to sleep, to just escape. But that didn't happen. Seeing her distress, her mother led her to an armchair and set her down while the family stood between her and gawking eyes. She heard someone ask what they'd done with Sheila, and the reply that she'd been thrown out of the funeral home by the owners who'd asked her to stay away. Nothing can ever undo this, though. Unable to think, not wanting to look at things that were too painful to contemplate, Alicia sat in a stupor as a drink of water and a cup of coffee was brought to her. She noticed Carol and her daughters were standing nearby. Nathan's family appeared to be devastated, too. No one needs such scandal attached to their already grieving family, she supposed. Gazing past her protectors, Alicia looked at Nathan, who was so close but never further away since she'd known him. His face had been shaped into a lifelike form, and he seemed to be sleeping. She guessed he was, but it was an eternal sleep. She could hear whispers as people sidled around, trying to look past the others to see how she was taking this added blow. The visiting room was full of their old classmates and of newer friends made in their individual occupations. Why did this have to happen with so many witnesses around? Alicia opened the cupboard door in her mind and shoved this episode inside it, slamming the door tightly. She couldn't deal with it right now. She wasn't going to try to. Resolutely, she put it away from her and rose to go back to the casket. Her entourage moved with her, still protective, and others stepped aside so she could get close to her husband. "What's she going to do now?" a whisper asked. "I bet she'd strangle him if he wasn't already dead," someone whispered back. "You think he was having an affair with that woman?" "Of course. What else would make her act that way?" Alicia heard the talk, but she blocked out the meaning. She wasn't going to deal with it now, and that was that. Some of her strength had come back, and she prayed that it would be sufficient to get her through this without giving the town something else to talk about. She stood with Nathan for 15 minutes, and when his mother came in to stand beside her, she took her hand for a minute and then walked away. At the back of the room, she sat down with her family to watch the pictures cycling through the video, facing it rather than her fellow mourners. Only when she heard a collective gasp from the others did she turn around to see that Sheila Parks had returned. She'd made it all the way to the casket again without being stopped. Alicia had had enough. She rose from her chair and headed toward the front of the room as others also moved that direction. Sheila turned toward her and shrieked. "Nathan and I are going to be together. I've seen to that." Before anyone could move, Sheila had whipped out a handgun and put it to her head. The sound of the shot echoed through the crowded building, paralyzing everyone as blood and gore shot from Sheila's head and covered the formerly white silk of the casket and Nathan's neat blue suit. Her body was sprawled forward over his in a ghastly way, her arms reaching out to embrace him. This time Alicia did faint. There was a buzzing in her head as if a hive of bees had invaded her, and then a warm darkness wrapped her in its embrace. A person can only take so much, and she had reached her limit. So that's the first two chapters of the book I'm working on. And I'm now working on, I'm now on the 22nd chapter of that book. My computer's been down though, so I haven't been doing much with that. For the last, it's been down about a week and a half. It's in the shop, so. I thought I would read some, I go to some writing groups where we have writing prompts. You may have had some for classes if you take writing classes. And we're told to write about a certain thing or to try something. So I kind of have a collection of things that I would have probably never written unless someone gave me a writing prompt. And I thought I would read some of those things. One of the writing prompts that we were given one time was to listen to some kind of music, have it in the background, and then just write whatever came to mind, whatever we felt like writing. And I happened to be listening to something by Tom T. Hall. If you've heard of him, he's a country music singer who kind of talks more than he sings. But it brought up this one, which is a short little piece called Hillbilly Band. He was an old coot who liked his moonshine, his music, and his Ford pickup truck. All Buster ever wanted to do in his life was to start himself a country band. He played the spoons, pounded on tin pans, and hummed to himself all day long. He longed to become a band leader. Now he was 69 years old. He knew his dream had long since died, but still, when the moonshine lay mellow in his tummy and his old eyes closed in thought, sometimes Buster still figured maybe he could get some kind of music going if he could find the energy. Energy, however, was in short supply these days. That had been the case until yesterday, when he found an unusual berry growing in his garden and had sampled it to slake his curiosity. That berry had given him pep like he'd never had, not even at 18. Hurriedly, he'd gone out and picked all the berries, excepting for two, which he hoped to use as seed for next year. This discovery was a gold mine, he knew. If he could just figure out how to use it, not only would he be able to live his own life to the fullest, but he could market the berry to someone who'd buy the miracle drug for a fortune. Buster was so excited that he went around his garden, banging on the tables, chairs, fence, rain barrel, on his own knees. He picked up a shovel and banged it on the side of his house in rhythm to his own feelings of joy. Soon Jed came along, having been called by Buster. He brought his reeds and his bongo drums. Bill brought an old guitar, and Adam brought a harmonica. Buster went inside and located his juice harp. After they each had a berry, they set to work playing their music. Soon all the clanging and banging had neighbors from a mile down the road dropping by to see what the excitement was all about. The news spread, and the yard was now full of enthusiastic country folk there to join the party. In his exuberance, Buster shared his berries with the group, who grabbed sticks and started adding their noise to the general commotion. Those who weren't playing music were dancing to it. I finally have my band, Buster whispered to himself in awe, and I'm the leader. He let the group in when the Saints Go Marching In and other old favorites. The celebration went on all night. By morning, Buster was starting to get tired, but his friends and neighbors were still at it. Some were singing now as the others played and banged, strummed, and hummed. Buster went inside to find another berry so he could pep himself up, but to his surprise, all the berries were gone. He'd given them all away. Oh, well, there's still 2 of them growing in the garden, he said, and headed out to the garden to get one. But when he got to the garden, even those 2 berries were gone. His neighbors must have found them. Sad about the berries, but happy about his band, Buster sat down amidst the happy confusion and drifted into sleep. His friends finally noticed that he wasn't breathing, but his smile was a beautiful thing to behold. He had left this world having accomplished his dream to have his own band, and Buster had died among his friends. So that was what the music inspired me to write that day.